Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're thrilled to be here as we're all sort of tackling the new year together, and tackle it we will. In fact, it's really interesting to see as we continue to celebrate the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. We're continuing to see so many great leaders. And one of the things I posted about is I got prepared for what are my goals going to be for 2024. One of the things I want to do is I want to dig even deeper to tell the stories of people who are working in the trenches to really make a difference in coastal Mississippi, people we would not normally know about. And it's going to be up to you as listeners and those of you working in the community. Let me know who those people are. And Kyle and Cammie and I will make sure that we bring attention to them and have conversations about their commitment so that we can all learn from them and hold them up as examples for all of us to give back to our community. The one thing that makes coastal Mississippi such a thriving region is that we have so many people who are willing to give their time and energy to make for a better community. Hey, listen, I wanted to share a couple of quotes that got posted, and then we'll go to our first guest today. Our guest, we actually have one guest today that we're going to spend the whole show with. But this one actually hit me, and I think it will hit you too. And it really speaks to the kind of contemplation that we're all going through. And this is something someone posted. I don't know who said it, but any of us could have said it. And here's what the quote says. I lost myself trying to please everyone else. Now I'm losing everyone while I'm finding myself. You know, at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of people reflect about the people who they surround themselves with. Are they negative? Do they help you raise your bar? Do they help you kind of make your game better? Or do they tear you down? And who's positive? Who helps build you up and provide for you the kind of reflection that we all should be doing when we think about living in the moment? We're proud to have that person with us. But I think a lot of people are doing that right now. I think we're the sum total of the people that we choose to be around. Something to really think about and contemplate as we enter 2024. And the other one is from Mary Tyler Moore. And most of us remember Mary Tyler Moore, the actress. She was born back in January of 1936. Boy, does time fly. But she once said this: pain nourishes courage. You can't be brave if you've only had wonderful things happen to you. I think this, you know what, I often say this: there's a powerful lubrication to change that comes from pain. That pain causes us to want to change. And you know what? If you think about pain nourishing courage, all of us here in coastal Mississippi that were here around Hurricane Katrina knows what it looks like to have courage in the face of pain. And I think Mary Tyler Moore is very right. I think one organization that really understands that's constantly thinking about where are the pain points in coastal Mississippi regionally that we can address and focus on and get them out of the way so that we can make sure that the trajectory going forward is nothing but positive, so that we can continue to be the economic engine for Mississippi that we are, because we are the single biggest economic engine for Mississippi, is my friend Jamie Miller, who's the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. And we're going to be having him for the whole show today. But anyway, let me start by just saying Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you.
So I'm assuming you're sitting in your office at the Knight Center?
I am. First time I've been back for a few days. I took a few days off for the New Year and over Christmas. So, it's nice to be back, jump back into, a routine, watched a lot of football, had a lot of good conversations with friends and family. But, yeah, ready to jump back in it and get ready for 2024. Not get ready for it. We're in it. So we're here.
Yeah, we are here in the legislative session started yesterday because this is playing on Wednesday. And we by now have a new speaker, and things are progressing rapidly. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. But Jamie, I know you well. We've worked together over a long series of community activities together, both here and in Alabama. And what I know of you is that you really, like I do, focus a lot on balancing the work that you do in the community, the work that you do at the Business Council with family. And I have to tell you, man, this has been a terrific holiday for me personally. The opportunity, my son Justin was in town for a couple of weeks from New York City, and his girlfriend actually joined us for a week as well, and had all the grandkids at the house. And Man, I often say this, but I do live in the moment, man. I plan for the future. I don't worry at all about yesterday. I do count my blessings every single day. And you're the same kind of guy when it comes to family. That's number one in your life, isn't it?
It certainly is. Or I would say it has been the last maybe decade or so. When you're younger, I think your career takes on a prominent role, sometimes too prominent. And I had I've had family supporting me along the way. But I tell you, as your seasons of life change, you start to see the real value in your life and how you're pouring yourself out in your family. And so, yeah, more now than ever, probably, I want to make sure that family remains first, but still really excited, encouraged about the work I get to do in this role as the president of the business council. So I'm like you. I had a great holiday with friends and family, and recharged a bit for this year ahead of us.
One of the things I think happens as we get older, I can't help but think about George Slogel, and I had the pleasure, God, I was honored to have a conversation with a long, full show with George, not long before he passed away unexpectedly, the way that he did. But along the way, I asked him, I said, how do you want to be remembered? And he said, I don't want to be remembered. And he was serious about that. He said, I just want the things that we're working on to continue. So that, if I had a role in putting things in place that bring people back to the community, then, that would be great. But, he wanted to be a great father and grandfather. At the end of the day, our legacy probably first is our family and, the kind of values we leave behind in our family. And then probably second, it's, the work we do in the community to help efforts. And maybe, as George pointed out, whether his name's attached to the effort or not, if those efforts continue and if he had a role in that, that's great. So as we get older, we realize that, that's really what we're up to, isn't it?
It is. And George was a great reminder of that. I saw that same quote. I heard you say that, that George was not, it wasn't about him. And it's easy for people that are in those roles. They're leading efforts, initiatives. But I think when you get to know someone like George and you have an honest conversation with him, George was not trying to build his legacy. It was not ultimately about George Slogel's name living on as much as it was him pouring himself into other people, into the community. And those are the things that will outlive everybody, and family included. But I think it's a characteristic or an attribute that leaders need to, if they're not already thinking of. It's if you're just out there trying to build your legacy, then that's probably going to be very limited. But if you're truly out there trying to build and pour yourself into other meaningful things, those are the things that live on.
Well, what I've come to appreciate is that when we do go on, move on, when we go to meet our Maker, the lights are not going to blink.
Yeah.
Life's going to go on, yeah. And that's just the reality of living. And I think, working as hard as we can to make as big an impact as we can. And what's awesome, I think about you coming back to the coast, Jamie, after having been in all these different roles that have served you well, I think prepared you well to be the CEO of the Business Council. It's amazing to me, actually, that November, I think I remember this correct, November 2022 is when you came here. So it's been a little over a year. I mean, it's amazing how fast time flies, really. But you came back into an organization with incredible leadership. I mean, the dedication from the CEOs and others that you're involved with, that's got to be inspiring to you. That keeps you going, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the main reasons that I took the job was because, William Yates at the time was chairman, and we sat down a few times. And then as I interviewed with some of the other executive committee members, people like Jerry St. Pé, Kerry Wilkinson, Roy Anderson, I mean, it's a who's who of CEOs on the coast. They really wanted to make sure I was the right fit for the organization, and I wanted to make sure I was the right fit to be here at this time. And so through those series of conversations and some encouragement and honest talk about, things, it was so clear that this was the right place for me to be at the right time. And so, but that was all a part of their leadership and understanding what the right person should be or who that person could be. So.
Yeah, fit's hugely important. Actually, we in all the organizations that I led, I was first focused on, is this person a good fit for the organization? They bring something that's going to help move us forward and not be disruptive in their approach. So style and values, all those things are really important. I knew you were going to be a great fit because I'd worked with you before, but I think you did a great job of evaluating that just to be sure. And now you've been in the role for over a year now. I mean, does it blow your mind to think that it's been that quick?
It went by really fast. And, when I got here in November, I knew we were looking right into that legislative session. I knew we had to kind of pull some strings together to get a agenda together. And so the good news is that the job is to me, it's challenging and fun. So the time does fly by.
You've done a great job of developing partnerships, of focusing on initiatives. Your legislative work has been terrific. We're going to come back and talk about all those things when we come back and continue our conversation with the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, Jamie Miller. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Thrilled to have them as a major sponsor of my show, and they're doing great work in the community. I have my friend, the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, Jamie Miller, and we were reflecting a little bit on the past year. We'll continue to do that here in just a second. It was interesting, Jamie, as you point out, when you joined the organization, it wasn't long after you joined the organization that you had to be very focused on the legislative session. And to remind people, you had previous experience in that regard. So you were able to bring that experience to the Gulf Coast Business Council. You didn't have to, you already knew who leadership was. You knew committee chairman. You had experience with them. Man, that was hugely beneficial. Can you imagine if someone had come in from the outside trying to figure that out?
Yeah, in many ways, the timing was really good because it was something that was important for the council to be engaged in. It was something I was familiar with. And so you're right. I've spent at least the last 10 or 12 years somewhat involved in the legislative process as the director of the Department of Marine Resources. And then when I went to NBA, I was over legislative and government affairs. And so I was in the Capitol a lot, certainly during the session, and then meeting and having conversations with leadership. And so that was a significant help to me in this role as I went into the session. Now, look, there were many relationships, frankly, coast delegation relationships that I needed to work on. There was our delegation, we want to make sure that our delegation's informed about what the Business Council and business and industry are up to. But it takes time to build those relationships. And I think the Business Council and myself spent quite a bit of time last year during the session and afterwards trying to make sure we were being used as a resource for them, but also informing them on issues that were important.
Well, I think, I know the history very well. Again, I was there during the formative days and I've watched it carefully over all these years, that it's natural, actually, for an organization like the Gulf Coast Business Council, a really important regional business organization that involves major CEO, major employers. They have the resources, they have the employees, they have the leadership muscle to be able to tackle big issues. It's natural, actually, to have a bit of a rub between what your initiatives might be at the Gulf Coast Business Council and what individual legislators' initiatives might be. It's just natural. So the goal is to try to create alignment. I know, and again, we're not doing an analysis of this now, but I just know from experience that there are some people that never really appreciated the role that the Business Council played. And I think, what you got to do starting into a role like this, you got to say, okay, I'm going to do my best I can to make sure I sort of recalibrate how they see this organization and what we're attempting to do. What we're attempting to do is push this region in a way that enables us to grow, that focuses on the quality of life, all the things that you guys are focused on. And I think, taking that approach, you're going to win 90+% of them over, and you may win some over that you think you have that you don't really have, and others that you don't think you have that you really have. That's why it's important to communicate. You just got to communicate a lot, don't you?
I think that's key. You're right. Even among the business council, it's a diverse group of business and industry. I mean, some issues are more important than others to our organization. And then you've got individual committee chairmen and representatives from different parts of the coast that are issues that are important to them. I take the view of a long game. I mean, we're going to press and communicate on things we think are important. But I think Trent Lott or maybe somebody in his, or that group used to say, there's always another vote that has to be taken. You can't, you got to be careful about the bridges you burn or the relationships that you fracture, because there's always going to be another vote. And in my role, ultimately, I believe my responsibility is to have that open line of communication, to share good news and bad news, and to, take that as information about how the organization should move forward. But overwhelmingly, the legislature and our coastal delegation, I think, were very receptive to our things that we were supporting last year. And when they couldn't support it, they were very honest. And I thought that more than anything was a plus.
I think it was. And you think about Speaker White, and you think about, a new pro tem and Manley Barton representing coastal Mississippi. Man, that's a big win for us, isn't it?
I think the coast takes it for granted what a real, I don't call it an advantage, but we have a real strong delegation. When you think of, at least previously, this could change during this session, but we know Manley's going to be Speaker Pro Tem. We've got the current gaming chair in the House, the current chair of education in the House. Hank Zuber's led a great role with insurance. In the Senate, we've got leaders that have been there for quite a long time. We've got a mature Senate delegation and a very strong House delegation, and we've added some really, I think, are going to be really up and comers in the House as well. So I don't ever want to take that for granted, but we need to communicate and use that effectively, obviously.
Yeah, think about, there's so many we could talk about, but you guys actually gave special recognition to John Reed. And, to have that kind of leadership from coastal Mississippi, we're just lucky, aren't we?
We're fortunate. We're probably lucky, and we're also, I think it speaks to the credibility the coast has and those leaders have in their respective chambers. It won't always be that way, as we know in our federal delegation. Some of that power and influence ebbs and flows. But I think right now the coast is positioned very well with a good group of House and Senate members.
I think one of the more positive developments that you have been involved in is finding ways to partner with other statewide organizations, whether it be the Mississippi Economic Development Council, Mississippi Economic Council, the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. There's a long list that you've worked with, but the strength comes in numbers, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to some previous relationships at MDA. Those were key partners of that organization. So Scott Waller, John McKay, and BIPEC is another one, the Business and Industry Political Education Committee with Derek Easley. We joined BIPEC, and one of the reasons that was important, BIPEC meets each week of the legislative session with all the registered lobbyists, all the registered associations. Any issue that's happening in the Capitol gets discussed on Monday morning before the session starts for that week. It was an incredible resource for us to be available in those rooms. And then the speakers that come to those meetings are the leadership of House and Senate. And so that was a great partnership that we formed and paid some dividends. And then, we're much aligned with the same issues as MEC and MMA. And so it just made sense for us to be a part of that, but not just a member, but a participating kind of active partner with them. And so that was also a plus.
So many positives. It's at the end of the day, the region of coastal Mississippi, unless you're willing to really dive in, you can't really appreciate how complex it is when you think about the federal installations that are here. Every time I talk with Fofo Gill, as you well know, the mayor of Biloxi, our conversation inevitably drifts off into a conversation about Keesler and how important Keesler is to Biloxi, how important it is to the region, how important it is to the state of Mississippi. But obviously, it's not just Keesler. It's You think about Stennis Space Center and the CB base and the Coast Guard presence and all of the federal installations. And then, of course, the bookends that you and I talk about all the time with Chevron and Stennis, with Chevron and Ingalls on one end and Stennis and the blue chip industries that are part of it on the other, and hospitality. Wow. I mean, it's a complex, complicated economic region, isn't it?
It is. And I think we like to measure ourselves against other parts of the state and other regions, as we should. But I think we too often take it for granted. The number of employees at Chevron and Ingalls alone is multiple factor of Nissan and Toyota or other large manufacturers in the state. And those industries just don't run on their own. I mean, there's incredible work that has to go into those contracts that Ingalls has to win at the Navy. Chevron continues to be among their corporate infrastructure. They've had expansions. I mean, it goes unnoticed sometimes what incredible work happens in those mature industries. Now, on the other side, like Stennis Space Center, where we're recruiting new space companies. The space industry changed so much from this kind of government NASA-centered space flight now to a commercialized private space industry. Like Relativity Space has made huge investments at Stennis and others to come. Bill Cork, we talked about before. He's from Hancock County, understands that part of the state, and is doing some incredible work to recruit more companies.
Hey, when we come back, we'll continue this conversation about why coastal Mississippi is such a strong economic engine for the state of Mississippi. And then we'll speak specifically about some of the things that the Business Council is doing to sort of move the ball forward. What are their goals for the coming year and beyond? And this legislative session is in particular, because we have new leadership coming in and the dynamics are going to be different. We'll get his thoughts about that when we come back with Jamie Miller from the Gulf Coast Business Council. See you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend Jamie Miller, who's the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. I do mean friend because Jamie and I actually have worked together in the community through so many iterations of our lives. And I know him to be really a committed, community-focused leader. And it's fun to stay in touch with him as we both try to bring attention to the kind of things that need to be done or are being done, celebrate some successes along the way. When we went to break, though, we were talking about the complexities of this region we call coastal Mississippi. It's very complex. And I can't help but think about in the first week of doing what was the previous iteration of this show, the Coast View, I wanted to make sure that I've talked to what I refer to as the stalwart leaders. So, I mean, it had, of course, Haley Barber Owen and Roland Weeks and George Schloegel, Jerry St. Pé, and others. So many important leaders. I'll never forget in that first meeting, and I've really emphasized this many times, and you and I have chatted about it many times, but I think it's worthy of bringing back up again just because some people may be hearing us for the first time. Some people may need just to be reminded about this. But Jerry, and the beauty of having Jerry involved in your board is I can't overemphasize how important that is. But Jerry St. Pé, the former CEO of Ingalls and just longtime community leader and still in his 80s working hard in the community to help build a better place. Jerry urged us to not get complacent, that you talked about all those employees at Ingalls and Chevron. And then we think about, again, the blue chip industries that are part of Stennis. It's easy, are the gaming employees, for goodness sakes, and the number of hospitality jobs, indirect jobs that connected to that. It's easy to want to sort of take that for granted. But we can't. Here is Chevron, the most strategically important refinery in the U.S. that they continue, as you point out, to invest in. We can't overstate how important Chevron is to the nation, and much less coastal Mississippi and the state of Mississippi. Ingalls, I mean, they're not going to be building other, shipbuilding facilities. Ingalls has found its place, and when you look at the leadership of Carrie Wilkinson and her team, who serves on your board, incidentally. Gosh, man, we should be doing everything we can do to help move those goals, not only of Ingalls, but of Chevron and the supporting industries that support them to the next level. I could go on about Stennis and aerospace and, the blue economy. Man, we can't take any of it for granted, can we, my friend?
No, we can't. And one thing that I've maybe in the last few years, certainly in the last decade, is I've been in different roles. It's hard to know what next steps to take if you don't know where you're at. And that boils down to information and data to me. And so, whether it be manufacturing or gaming or information technology or the space industry, aerospace, one thing that we started last year that the Business Council has been so good about that I really want to improve on this year is just data availability. You don't know if you're lagging or you're ahead unless you've got consistent data. And the data's out there, but I want to make sure moving forward that the Business Council is a resource of capturing that data, putting it in a way that then can communicate a message. Because, too long, I mean, you can kind of go about your business without knowing what the realities are, and then it's too late. And so I think the Business Council, one of the roles, I mean, advocacy is a big part of our role, but you can't have advocacy without good data, without good information. And then, even when you have the information, you've got to go meet and build relationships with people that may be interpreting that data a different way. And so I would say, as it relates to our complacency or our future, I think one key element that the Business Council needs to continue to fill and improve on, and frankly, in my opinion, is data availability.
Yeah, so Jamie, I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that you can't go to where you want to go if you don't know where you are now. And we know what gets measured gets done. It just does. And the way to sort of manage complacency is to find out for sure what the measures of success look like. Yeah. And if you're underperforming, you just got to be honest about it. We're underperforming in this area or this metric or this comparison to other communities. And if we don't fix this is going to be a problem for us in the future. Every community's got those to deal with. Right. It seems to me maybe, strengthening some possibility with the University of Southern Mississippi might be a way to get that data. I don't know. I know it's hard. It comes from so many different sources. It's not easy to gather it into the benchmark that you're looking at. And you want to be able to create a scorecard that's easy to read, knowing that the data behind it is coming from a bunch of different sources, Speaking of Southern Mississippi, I want to commend the Business Council for hosting that terrific meeting with Dr. Joe Paul. I mean, it was a virtual who's who of the entire region there to welcome him, and the commitment that Southern Miss continues to have to coastal Mississippi is very significant. And you can see that Joe Paul is very, very focused on doing what he needs to do to strengthen the university's role here. And you guys know that, don't you?
Yeah, Joe Paul obviously has a long history with the university. Even when I was at school there in the mid-'90s, Joe Paul was there. And so I think him being named president, I was a big supporter of that. I'm glad it happened. And Joe Paul brings a very serious approach to what he believes needs to happen on the coast because he's seen the value in the opportunities on the coast. Now, it's a tricky thing. I don't want to make he's going to work hard at it. And frankly, the business community is going to have to help him get some of those things done. But that reception we hosted where he was able to speak and kind of lay out his vision was, as you said, well attended. There's great support and interest in our four-year university, especially Southern Miss on the coast. And so I look forward to continuing that partnership and staying in touch with Dr. Paul because he impressed upon me that night in other conversations. He's very serious about bringing or making the most of the opportunities on the coast.
Yeah, he looks at his metrics and he sees that the student enrollment has not grown the way that you would expect it to. And I remember I led an organization called Students for Higher Education on the Coast when I was at Southern Miss, and was pushing from a student's point of view the notion of having four-year university on the coast. If it's Southern Miss, that's great, but we really were focused on that. And during that effort, I got a chance to spend some time with, I think, a UNO or Tulane president. And one of the things that he said to me was that universities follow where the population is. He said it'd be interesting to watch how that plays out in Mississippi, but it's amazing to him that we didn't have the kind of thriving four-year university on the coast that we should have. It's taken a long time. We had to go through legislative changes, and budget cuts at Southern Miss makes it hard, and protecting the mothership is something that comes into fruition often. Joe Paul has been around through all of that history. He knows it well, and I think he's well positioned to say, we've got to do better. We got to grow our population of students here in coastal Mississippi, and we're going to do what it takes to get there. And it is going to take the business community working closely with him to achieve that goal. But I'm excited about that, and it was great to see that you guys hosted that meeting. I think another incredible development, something you and I have talked about many times, something we talked about during the infancy of the Business Council, was the formation of a PAC. Because we want to attract leaders into political positions that don't see the job necessarily as a promotion in life. We want people who want to give back and who's going to do their homework and et cetera. And you got a PAC now that can really support candidates and efforts that are going to make a difference. And it's been well received, hasn't it?
It has. One of the things the executive committee communicated to me in some of the interviews was my thoughts about a PAC and what that would look like. And I was supportive of it, but it is there is a lot of conversation about what is the intent of the PAC. Is it to support incumbents? Is it to challenge incumbents? There's a lot of different ways to take a direction of the PAC. But yeah, I think we were very successful. We got the PAC off the ground early in the year. We raised enough money to make contributions to those candidates that were running for office that we wanted to support. We formed a PAC board with a lot of really good members on the board. It created a lot of what I think are healthy discussions about moving forward and how we can leverage the PAC in future elections. And so This is the first year to have the PAC. I think it was successful, but I think in the future, even looking 4 years from now, we're going to reelect new governor, new lieutenant governor. A lot of people are going to be in different slots. And so the intent is to build that war chest and that PAC so that when that next election cycle comes around, we'll have some real ability to get in conversations and influence some of the people that maybe not the people, but have a dialogue with those who are going to be running for those offices, and then support the ones that are going to be good for coastal Mississippi and Mississippi.
Yeah, when I was meeting with on this show with Frank Bordeaux, who's chairman of the Republican Party, you know him well, he said he doesn't look forward to that next cycle because the bench is so strong.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough. But, that's part of the process. Democracy in action, and great leadership emerges from that usually. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation in the last segment of our show today with Jamie Miller. And we'll talk about Bill Cork, actually, from Hancock County Port and Development Commission, and now actually is head of MDA. We'll talk about that. Jamie used to work with him. That's actually good for coastal Mississippi. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. We have my friend, the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, Jamie Miller. I think it's important to have these conversations, Jamie, because we're educating people who don't really understand what the Business Council is all about. We're re-educating people who may have forgotten, and we're reminding people why you have to have a strong regional business organization that has the heads of these companies involved. It's great to have number twos and number threes involved, and in many cases they are involved. But with the CEO, the person making the decisions at the top involved in the Gulf Coast Business Council, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
It does. Those decision makers at the top of their industry, there's no, when they can make a decision in our executive committee or they make a decision for their industry, there's not another decision to be made. And so in just terms of efficiency and time, it's great. And I've learned a lot. Our executive committee meetings last about an hour. I try to bring things to that agenda that they'll comment on or vote on. But they work at such a high level. They are great decision makers, and they don't hesitate to give good comments. And so I benefited from that, and the coast benefits from it.
Yeah, they're. It's rare actually. It's actually rare for a community our size to have access to some of the leaders that we have access to, like the Kerry Wilkinsons and John Hairston's, et cetera. I mean, just incredible leaders. We mentioned Bill Cork before we went to break, formerly head of economic development in Hancock County, went to the MDA, has been working in MDA. Jamie actually used to work with Bill at MDA, was recently named by Governor Tate Reeves to be the executive director of MDA. Because of his familiarity, as you pointed out a few minutes ago, about the coast, that creates a real opportunity for us, doesn't it?
It does. I was fortunate enough to work with Bill at MDA. I got there a few years before he was recruited under the Reeves administration. I can, without question, without hesitation, say that Bill is the most professional economic development person I've ever been around in terms of just breaking deals down, putting deals together, communicating the more nuances, finance nuance of how a deal works. And he was already familiar with the state's incentives programs because he was at the Port and Harbor Commission. He's done this for quite a long time. So and he was named at when he came to MDA, he was the Chief Economic Development Officer. So that's how he spent all his time, with project managers, informing the governor, sitting with the governor, going through deals. And so this role into that executive director position, he's not going to be challenged at all, I think, with the pure economic development side of what he already knows. I think he now will take on some of the more political aspects of the role, where you're dealing with the legislature more, you're dealing with other entities, because MDA just doesn't do economic development. They're doing community development. They've got a host of programs that flow through that agency. And so he'll put the right team together. I'm confident of that. He's a Marine. He always has a plan. I've never been in a meeting with a Bill where he didn't have a plan to how to move forward. And so I look forward to working with him in the future. And the fact that he spent so much time on the coast, it's just we're very fortunate to have him.
Well, at the end of the day, what MDA has to do, and what they do, and they do it well, and you were there to see it, is support local economic development efforts. We're really lucky to have local economic development leaders and boards all across the state that are focused on moving the ball forward. And we've got a governor, and Governor Reeves. Man, you can say what you want to say about anything about him, but no one will ever say about him that he's not focused on economic development. I mean, the truth is he understands that the way to grow this state is create jobs. And, man, I mean, there's a lot of proof in that pudding. And, I'm excited about Jason White, the new speaker, Jamie. I think that we're going to have conversations about things. In the past, maybe some leaders were dug in about certain issues and we didn't get there. I think we're going to have a good, healthy debate about the healthcare system in Mississippi and the role that Medicaid or expansion or some form of that could play. I think we're going to have a debate and discussion about it. I think the whole notion of the ballot referendum process is something we're going to talk about again. School choice and efforts around how do we improve education in the state. I get the impression that whether it be Delbert Hosemann or the governor or the new speaker, we're going to have serious conversations in this state about solving important problems like maybe we haven't had in a long time. So I'm excited about it.
Excitement is a word that could be used. It's going to be an interesting session because we're in the 4-month session. I'm just based on tradition and observation. The first month in January, there's not going to be a ton of work that gets done. They'll name committee assignments will be made. They'll start preparing things. But, the first year before your term typically is when some of the larger issues can get tackled because you're further away from the politics of having to get reelected. And so I think you're right. Lieutenant Governor and Jason are going to, from what I'm hearing, they're going to take on these big issues. And not that everything will get resolved this year, but there's going to be a lot of serious debate and argument about how the state moves forward on some of those. And so that will be interesting to watch. What I'm also concerned about is how that plays into what the coast agenda may be.
I agree. Maybe so much noise around the big issues that some of the things that we're looking for. That's why the legislative reception and the legislative delegation and the leadership of the Gulf Coast Business Council is so critical to make sure that our issues don't get lost in the fog of the war around those big issues. Anyway, hey, Jamie, we're out of time, but it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. Happy New Year to you.
Hey, thanks again, Ricky. Happy New Year.
You bet. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.